All right, let's start with the big story that we're tracking on WIOn, and this is the update that is coming in from the White House, where U.S. President Donald Trump has warned Turkey against hurting U.S. soldiers during their operation. Now, according to him, if any soldier, U.S. soldier, were to get hurt, then big trouble is likely to follow. Listen in.
You know, Syria was supposed to be a short-term hit, just a very short-term hit, and we were supposed to be in and out. That was many, many years ago, and we only have 50 people in that area. That's a small sector, and I don't want those 50 people hurt or killed or anything. I don't want anything bad to happen to our people, and I told that to President Erdogan. I said, don't hurt any of our people get hurt. Big trouble.
All right, so that was President Trump with his plan that he has for Syria. And on your screens right now are the visuals that are coming in from northeastern Syria. And it shows the U.S. troops withdrawing from the region, opening a door for the Turkish military to carry out its operation. Now, the U.S. withdrawal, of course, what it means is that this will leave the Kurdish-led forces in Syria to battle the Turks. All right, now to add more perspective in terms of what U.S. President Donald Trump's plans are in Syria and for Turkey, we're joined in by our correspondent Kevin McAleese, who's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Kevin, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast on WIOn. And let me begin by asking you this. Now, this was a bit of a surprise announcement by President Trump, where he has said that he would like to withdraw completely from northeastern Syria. And this is, of course, allowed the Turks to, in fact, carry out this operation that they intend to there, where they say that they want to put out any kind of resistance or any plans of the Kurds to reassert their independence. So what exactly has prompted President Donald Trump to resort to this move?
Well, Donald Trump, through the White House, dropped this surprise strategy shift in key U.S. foreign policy in Syria just 12 hours ago, and Washington has been scrambling to react and get some sort of firm grip on exactly what this now means for the U.S. military role in that conflict zone. But according to Donald Trump, he is done with this war. He calls American troop involvement abroad in the likes of Afghanistan, be it Iraq and, of course, Syria, ridiculous, endless wars. He said it was a campaign promise of his to get US troops out of those situations and get them home. He is heading into an election year. This looks very much like a president who is trying to get a much sought-after foreign policy win before the election period kicks off and intensifies. But this was a surprise. It took his State Department by surprise, it seems, as did it the Pentagon as well, who have sort of pushed back against this notion that the US is completely withdrawing from the conflict in Syria at this stage. The White House said this wasn't a green light for Turkey to advance and invade northern Syria and those potential clashes with those Kurdish forces that, of course, the US relied so heavily on and were so pivotal in Donald Trump's claims of a victory over ISIS, over the caliphate. Turkey, of course, views them in a very different way altogether, views them as a terrorist organisation. And there's the problem. You've got the US and Turkey, who are NATO allies, but very much divided over their approach to these Kurdish forces. Absolutely, indeed. And one of the things that, a lot of people would be wondering, especially in the region where all of this is going to play out, is the fact that the Americans relied very, very heavily on the Kurdish YPG forces. And now they have virtually abandoned them for the Turks to deal with. Would this not be seen as a great betrayal by the Americans? And that's how it's being framed in Washington, even by members of Donald Trump's own party, who are very reluctant to come out and criticise this president on any of his policies, to be honest. But this one, they seem more galvanised in their criticism. They think it's a strategic misstep. They think it sends out a very poor signal internationally. Donald Trump said he didn't want the US to be a global police force anymore. But Republicans, as well as Democrats, are saying that we have responsibilities to the allies who died alongside our own troops in this fight against ISIS terrorists in Iraq and Syria, if we withdraw from that territory, from that region of Syria, then that is being construed as a green light for Turkey, because once you take the US out of the theatre of conflict, then obviously it's much easier for Ankara to advance militarily without any blowback. But you saw Donald Trump there speaking earlier today, talking about, if any US troops are harmed, there'll be big trouble. But that's incredibly vague, and he's been very vague on this over the last 12 hours or so when pushed on the issue. And we saw him say that, he warned or threatened Turkey that he would obliterate and destroy its economy if Turkey took any steps off limits. What are the steps he's referring to, and exactly how is he going to obliterate this economy? Questions that remain unanswered.
Absolutely indeed. And just before I let you go, Kevin, the fact of the matter is the United States, it is estimated, has somewhere about 1,000 US soldiers in Syria, and in this specific region that we are talking about, Trump has said that the United States has just about 50 US soldiers. So is this actually in keeping with what his plan is to pull the US troops, or is this effectively making a certain kind of a concession to Turkey to try and strengthen the bond with Turkey?
Well, I think some people may view it that way. You could also argue that the partial drawdown of troops perhaps is a result of some internal pressure, whether that's coming out of the State Department or the Defence Department, saying to Donald Trump, look, we can't just commit to a full withdrawal at this stage. It sends out a bad message, potentially. Mitch McConnell, senior member of Donald Trump's Republican Party today, saying, look, this only serves the interests of Iran and Russia and potentially the re-emergence of the ISIS caliphate. They're the real winners if Donald Trump goes ahead with this current policy, which at the moment he seems intended to do.
Absolutely. We'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Kevin McAleese, for joining us and getting us all those insights in terms of what is the dynamic that is working out within the United States in terms of this announcement by the US president. And one has to just wait and watch as to how things unfold in northeastern Syria. We'll, of course, track the developments that unfold there, but let's now shift our attention to the other big story that we are tracking on WIOn, where the United States has blacklisted 28 Chinese organizations for their alleged role in the abuses and human rights violations against the Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang province. Now, the organizations have been put on a so-called entity list, which bars them from buying products from US companies without prior approval from Washington. And one of the world's largest makers of surveillance equipment is amongst those who've been targeted. Now, in addition to this, Xinjiang's Public Security Bureau is also on the list, along with 19 other smaller government agencies. Now, China has not issued any comment on the US decision so far, and this is not the first time that the United States has placed Chinese groups under a trade ban. Now, in the month of May, Donald Trump's administration had also added Huawei to the entity list because of the security fears over its products. Now, various human rights groups had said that Beijing is severely persecuted the Muslim Uyghurs in detention camps, which China, of course, calls as re-education camps in Xinjiang.